So now we're selling chorionic gonadotropin obtained through the death of mares, so the industry can produce more and more and more. Uruguay for export. Fortunately, this isn't yet practiced in the Department of Canolones, and I hope it never will be.
The blood business involving pregnant mares in Argentina and Uruguay is under criticism. Both countries are known for their love of horses. Many people have horses as pets, like dogs and cats. The disturbing images of blood farms that have been shown in the media for the last decade are outraging people and being addressed in the political arena.
Manual termination of the pregnancy. The procedure begins with a veterinarian putting on a disposable glove for the rectal examination and disinfecting it with an iodine solution. Following disinfection, the veterinarian inserts his hand into the vagina and pushes a finger through the cervix to remove the mucus plug. He then ruptures the amniotic sac, initiating the termination of the pregnancy.
In Uruguay and Argentina, 10,000 mares are kept on blood farms in cruel conditions. When pregnant, their blood contains the hormone equine chorionic gonadotropin, also known as PMSG. The fertility hormone PMSG is used in industrial animal breeding to trigger estrus, or in other words, make the animals come into heat. The aim is to make the cycle of processes from birth to slaughter run efficiently. PMSG is predominantly used in places with a lack of good husbandry conditions to save costs. Up to 10 liters of blood per week are extracted from the mares for up to 11 weeks. But where are the thousands of foals? They do not come into the world alive. They are aborted 110 to 130 days into the pregnancy, so the mares can become pregnant twice a year.
The situation that these mares are subjected to 110 to 130 days into the pregnancy, when the fetus, the foal, is almost fully developed, is deeply shocking.
Se le genera un aborto en condiciones absolutamente increíbles.
A termination is forced under almost unimaginable conditions. We will not show footage of this practice, as many people would find it unbearable to watch.
Muchos de nosotros no podríamos soportarlo.
Endless cruelty for the extraction of the red gold, PMSG. PMSG is traded at prices that are higher than any drug. 100 grams of pure PMSG powder earn blood farmers $1.5 million. The profit is not used to the horse's benefit. After just a few years, the mares become ill, exhausted, or injured. Deemed useless, they are slaughtered or left to die somewhere in an open field. It's clear that this practice of collecting blood from the mares involves them receiving blows and shocks from electric prods. As the footage shows, the animals struggle against repeated blood collections. This results in abortions, physical injuries, lifelong scars, and in many cases, a painful death in a pasture, as the animals are even denied a dignified death through euthanasia. We find the victims of the blood business in the blood farms and on their pastures. We approach them from the air. Large herds of mares show that it is blood season in Argentina and Uruguay. Syntex Blood Farm, Argentina. We get an overview of the condition of the horses. It quickly becomes clear that the herds once again include lots of injured, lame, and sick mares. On its website, the blood farm operator claims that the workers are trained to handle the horses.
The company's staff have been trained at the Animal Welfare Department of the School of Veterinary Sciences, University of Buenos Aires. This training program, which is repeated every year, includes workshops and internal seminars involving all people involved on all procedures related to animal handling.
For 10 years now, we have been observing unprofessional horse handling whenever the staff have not realized that they are being monitored. This also applies to the Syntex blood farm in Uruguay. Chaotic driving, panicking horses, and time again, injured horses, like this piebald mare. We'll have an expert assess her condition later on. 16 months of covert research, many hours of film footage. We want to have the footage reviewed by an expert. We meet up with Dr. Theo Chance, a veterinarian at the Netherlands Equine Clinic in Switzerland. Before our meeting, we sent him a selection of frequent and typical scenes. Here are examples from 2 blood farms.
You have to remember that horses are flight animals that quickly panic. These people are brandishing flags and driving the horses into narrow raceways. The access routes to the blood collection halts are very narrow. This is probably where they pick up their initial injuries, which we saw previously. It's simply brutal.
La Paloma Blood Farm, Uruguay. Chaotic driving and beating to separate the horses or force them into the raceway inside the building. No attempts are made to calm the situation. One worker seems to be listening to music. He dances. Biomega Blood Farm, Uruguay. We filmed brutal blood collections here in 2018. The blood farmer Bocking is a veterinarian who has claimed in a scientific paper that the levels of PMSG in the blood are higher when the mares are in poor physical condition. Workers drive the mares towards blood collection boxes. They scare them. The only human contact the horses are familiar with involves being driven and beaten, the thick cannula being inserted into the jugular vein. Their foals being taken away from them through manual abortion after 11 weeks of blood collections. Human contact means chaos, beatings, tethering, fear of death, pain, and loss. The mares leave the blood collection boxes exhausted, apathetic, or panicked. The shaking of their necks and bodies is a stress reaction, as if they are trying to shake off what has just happened. Lowered heads are a sign of exhaustion. They stand in the pen exhausted. Some are injured, some lie down.
If you collect 10 liters within a very short period of time, you consciously run the risk of the horse going into hypovolemic shock, acute cases of which can cause death. If you collect that amount of blood from horses every week, they suffer from a constant state of severe anemia and are susceptible to infections.
The poor care, the debilitating blood collections, and the tethering of the horses in the blood collection boxes have consequences, even including death. We discover a dead mare in the pond used as a watering hole. These mares belong to the Argentinian blood farm Syntex.
I can see multiple horses that are severely injured. These are clearly injuries that haven't been tended to. There are several mares with injuries that have made them extremely lame. And what's striking is that all of the injuries that you can see on the horse's limbs are in roughly the same places.
We see injured horses in the middle of herds at all blood farms. In another group, we see a mare with a typical wound on her bulb. This kind of injury results from mares being restrained in the blood collection boxes. On trying to escape, they kick bars and gates. The boxes are injury traps for flight animals.
This horse clearly has a very deep wound on the front of her fetlock. You can see that the horse lies down. She can obviously no longer stand. The injury most likely goes right into the fetlock joint. That's extremely painful and leads to an infection in the fetlock joint. It's highly likely that the horse will die from this injury if the wound isn't treated properly. This wound has definitely not been treated properly or, in my opinion, at all.
Should the horse be treated by a veterinarian?
Yes, definitely. You need to determine whether the wound actually affects the joint. The joint should then be cleaned under general anesthetic, any foreign bodies should be removed, and the wound should be sutured. The horse needs a long course of antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs and should be bandaged. The flies you see can naturally trigger infections. They don't just land on the grass, but also on feces. So they can contaminate the wound and cause a severe infection.
Untreated wounds are always at risk of becoming inflamed. Horse experts are aware of this and disinfect even minor wounds. We showed Dr. Chantz another injury, this time to a horse's head.
What we now see is a severe injury to the lower jaw. Insofar as I can tell, it's again never been tended to. It's an open wound. You can see it gaping, so it's clearly not been treated whatsoever. There is no doubt that this injury should be surgically treated.
Syntex Argentina claims that sick and injured horses are separated from the herds and moved to the protection of a nursing paddock where they are treated, that they have permanent access to food and water there. At no point in our research were horses in the nursing paddock. Half of the covered area is used for storage, while severely injured and lame horses are left to their own devices out on the pastures. Instead of being treated, they remain blood donors. If they die, cheap replacements are found.
That's another extremely lame horse. She can barely move and must be in horrendous pain. The horses struggle to eat because they can no longer move around. This will lead to them becoming emaciated or even starving to death. The horse should be given a box with direct access to food and water, so she doesn't have to move around at all to get them.
Even the mares walking on 3 legs still remain blood donors.
Multiple horses are severely lame. It's astonishing that they can even still walk. They are so severely lame, but yet they are still driven by these gauchos. It's outrageous that they are still driven with the herd despite not even being able to walk properly. This panic caused by the gauchos driving them as part of the herd is what makes them keep going for as long as they can. I'm sure that's all it is. This is a horse with a hind lameness, still being driven with a herd despite being severely lame. These aren't just minor cases of lameness that we'd examine closely here in Europe. The horses are severely lame. It's crazy.
Also, das ist verrückt.
It's completely incomprehensible to someone who likes animals. It makes me sad.
Mich traurig. Und auf der anderen Seite wütend.
But also furious. Really furious.
Das ist doppelt brutal.
It's absolutely brutal that horses who no longer want to put any weight on a leg are still driven to these blood collection points on 3 legs.
Werden zu diesen Blutentnahmestellen.
Victims are clearly visible in all pastures. You can only guess what is going on in the horses' minds, which experiences burden their memories. We find numerous mares in poor physical condition. In this mare's case, it seems that Syntex simply wants to save the cost of euthanasia. Skeletally thin, she staggers across the dusty ground in search of food.
Das ist mir aufgefallen.
What I've noticed, including in other footage, is that there are lots of regions where there is absolutely no food. The ground is dusty and there are a few shrubs, but definitely not the food that the horses need. This horse should actually have more food than other healthy horses. But she clearly can't find it here. Everything edible has already been grazed.
Das ist kaum zum Zuschauen. Also dieses Pferd ist...
It's hard to even look. This horse is all skin and bones. She's a skeleton. She's severely lame, and when she puts a weight on her front limbs, the joint axis is clearly misaligned. The horse has either badly torn a ligament or fractured her leg.
Syntex operates blood farms in Argentina and Uruguay. We observe groups of mares in Uruguay over several days. Different countries, the same cruelty, as shown by the example of this piebald mare.
This is another horse who is alone. Once again, her hind left leg is clearly severely lame.
Es kann sich kaum fortbewegen, aber es...
She can barely walk, but is amazingly still eating. She's got a severe injury on the lower part of her limb. I can see blood. She even lies down, looks at her leg and licks the wound. That's a sign that she's in great pain. The horse eats while lying down because she can no longer stand. She even lies on her side and stops eating. As the camera zooms in, you can see the horse is breathing far too quickly. That's another sign that she's in pain. You can now see the wound far better here. The horse lies down again, so must be in incredible pain.
Das muss unsägliche Schmerzen haben.
The wound again looks untended to. It's clearly not been treated in any way.
Gepflegt aus. Also da hat man sicher auch nichts dran gemacht. Erstaunlich.
It's astonishing that the horses are still occasionally trying to eat, despite their pain. If we had injuries like those, we certainly wouldn't be eating. It's amazing how tough some of them are and how strong a desire they have to live.
It's unclear what's being sprayed from a PET bottle onto the wound from a meter away here. It's probably water, as medicines are expensive, so it would be unlikely for them to be administered so wastefully. The pain remains severe.
Also wissen Sie, grundsätzlich kann man Desinfektionsmittel...
You can generally only use antiseptic remedies or sprays for superficial wounds and grazes.
Diese Behandlung ist völlig sinnlos.
This treatment is completely pointless because the wound is extremely deep and tipping antiseptic liquid or even water over it has no effect. It's pointless.
Nutzlos, es bringt gar nichts. Ich denke, das ist ein Gemisch aus Blut.
I think what you see is a mixture of blood, dirt and dying tissue. The leg is essentially rotting.
She can't walk straight. Her hind legs are visibly off-kilter. What does that indicate?
Despite this horse being severely lame and in pain, she's still driven to the halt with the rest of the horses.
Zu den Hallen getrieben. Also das Pferd läuft dermaßen verschoben, diagonal.
The horse is walking askew, diagonally, because she's in great pain and is trying to shift her weight onto her healthy side.
We showed Dr. Theo Chance images of the Biomega blood farm. The horses are solely corralled into boxes through force. Halters are pulled over their heads to tether them. Workers then insert the cannulas. This procedure causes panic and pain for the semi-wild flight animals. Film footage from 2018 shows how brutal the workers are. Today, 7 years later, little seems to have changed.
You can see a horse. Firstly, the boxes are far too small for the horses. They are far too narrow. The horses are too constrained when tied up, as you can see from this horse, and it makes them panic. The third horse from the right tries to jump over the box. She's going to seriously injure herself. This is naturally far worse for a wild horse than for a domesticated one. As you can see here, they panic far quicker than horses who are used to being tied up. Horses aren't stupid. We notice it with our patients. If you've heard horses once or twice before, when someone comes to treat them again, they know that it's going to hurt and they struggle. You can't explain to a horse what you're doing. And if you constantly hurt horses, they'll try to break free of the boxes, like this horse did.
Back in Argentina, the Argentine Veterinary Authority, SENASA, is responsible for monitoring blood farms here. Several legal experts have criticized its behavior. Lawyer Angelica Miotti criticizes that SENASA is trying to use its own resolution to legalize the cruel activities of blood farms. The legal framework for these violent practices is extremely weak and questionable, or even illegal. The basis is merely an internal SENASA resolution, namely Resolution 301 from 2021. But the same authority that issued the resolution is now responsible for monitoring compliance with it. This sub-legislative resolution is very low-ranking and contradicts both National Law 14346 and Argentina's constitutional principles that have been enforced since 1994. For Angelica Miotti, there is therefore no doubt. The entire production chain for blood products is criminal. There is no way to produce blood products without cruelty and mistreatment. In Argentina, Law 14346 from 1954 defines numerous acts as criminal offenses, including inadequately or poorly feeding animals, denying animals adequate veterinary care, unnecessarily mistreating animals, subjecting animals to cruel practices. The cruel blood collections from mares embody all of these acts. The blood business also involves thousands of abortions every year. For Angelica Miotti, the conclusion is therefore clear. The abortions caused are also punishable by criminal law. This further cruel practice, which is inextricably linked to blood collections from mares, means suffering for both the mares themselves and the aborted foals. This is animal cruelty and furthermore a crime in Argentina.
It's believed that the earlier a foal is aborted, the fewer complications are expected. Inducing labor at this point can result in difficult births, the horses being completely unable to deliver, or the horses' birth canals being damaged. Another complication is that of placenta retention. In other words, the horses being unable to expel the placenta, which then becomes toxic.
Lawyer Leonardo Barnaba has been dealing with the blood business as part of his legal work for years. He is certain.
This is undoubtedly a crime in Argentina. Law 14346 specifies several offenses, two of which are particularly relevant here. Firstly, it's a crime not to give animals enough food and of an appropriate quality. Secondly, Article 3(7) expressly prohibits causing unnecessary suffering to animals.
Lawyer Barnaba finds it scandalous that a criminal charge that he brought in 2019 against the blood farm Syntex was simply consigned to the archives, especially as the veterinary authority SENASA did not dispute, among other things, the documented animal cruelty.
The case wasn't dismissed by a judge. Instead, the prosecutor of the Dolores Attorney General's office consigned it to the archives on the following two grounds. Firstly, SENASA authorizes the activity, And secondly, in Senasa's view, even the documented beatings are normal forms of animal treatment. The prosecutor therefore found that there was no criminal offense.
Senasa justifies its statement by saying that it's normal for incidents of beatings and mistreatment to occur with this type of production where there are so many mares. The Senasa resolution of 2021 testifies to this non-animal friendly attitude. The blood farmers claim that the horses lead a free life in expansive areas. What this really means is shown by the example of this mare from the Uruguayan blood farm La Paloma, who should have been treated in isolation in a nursing paddock. We show Dr. Theo Chance the images.
The horse is struggling to get to the water, to the lake. There are even severe ridges in her way. Despite being severely lame, the horse has to get past these ridges to get the water and be able to drink.
What does Dr. Chance think about the water quality?
It's a cesspit.
Eine Kloake. Nein, das Pferd braucht.
No, the horse needs clean water like we're used to in Europe. This water is no good at all. The horse can pick up infections, get diarrhea.
Bekommen, Durchfall.
She now seems to have found somewhere she can get into the pasture more easily, but this once again has no grass. It's all barren, dry and dusty. This arid ground and dry grass no longer have any nutritional value.
Das hat keinen Nährwert mehr.
Syntex, Ayacucho site, Argentina. Several groups of mares are in the pens, as always including severely injured and lame horses. Among them, a rarity, a foal. It survived the attempted abortion. Argentina and Uruguay could be horse paradises. That is, if it weren't for the brutal blood business which a small number of blood farmers have used to harvest red gold for over 40 years, at the expense of not only the mares and their foals, but also a culture with close ties to horses.
Ein derartiger Betrieb in Europa ist
A company like this in Europe is inconceivable. It would be shut down immediately, with the owners prosecuted for animal cruelty.
Europe is also to blame for this horse suffering. The PMSG product fix plan, produced from the blood of mistreated mares from the blood farm Syntex, has been available in the EU since 2021. It received its first market approval in Ireland. Like most members of the European Parliament, Irish MEP Lynn Boylan is calling for a ban on the importation of PMSG.
So in the Farm to Fork strategy in 2021, a large majority of MEPs actually voted for an end of the production of using pregnant mares to produce PMSG and called for the EU to invest in alternative methods. So that majority was 452 of 699 MEPs. So a very clear call from the European Parliament to end this practice.
Uruguay is on the right track. 4 departmental parliaments have already banned the blood business, including in the department of Canelones.
Afirmativo.
The end of the blood business is also being debated in Argentina. So far, Europe has exported animal cruelty to other countries. This is neither ethical nor what the public want. The responsibility now lies with politicians.